Howdy folks, Rudrose here, and welcome to another Lorcana Wednesday, the Wednesday after the Disney Lorcana North American Championship 2025, and today we'll be going over essentially the top 16 decks from the event. I had some other thoughts to say about the event itself. There's a lot of stories about just a lot of different things coming out of it. There were disqualifications for several players. I heard the side events weren't very good from someone who was actually there. They said the prizing wasn't very good. I know there's been complaints about the 2-game format. I do think the 2-game format deserves its own video, so I might try to get that one out next week, just exclusively talking about 2-game format as a whole. We've had a whole year with it. Just to kind of talk about the pros and cons of it. For me, it's mostly cons, but again, I think that deserves its own video. However, the more I thought about it, I don't really want to comment on stuff when I wasn't there myself. Like if I was there myself, as I was in Dallas, I feel a bit more comfortable saying, oh yeah, here's what I thought of the side events. Here's what I thought of XYZ. So if other people want to do that who are actually there, I'll let them handle that for now. I think it's just fun to look at the deck lists, especially because I have a little mini rant about the deck building and the diversity in Lorcana, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So anyway, here's our top 16. You can go to Dreamborn if you want to see them. It's under the events tab here. And yeah, so this was the top 16 after Swiss. I'm just going to look at them in top 1 to 16 order. Obviously, we know Edmund Chu won. He was number 5. I think he faced Scott Markeson in the finals. So let's go right into Mr. Mo Shamblin's deck. As it said on screen, I believe he was the only Amethyst Emerald on here. Yep, that looks to be correct. And I have to admit, as I looked over this and as I watched him pretty much get obliterated by Zan in the top cut on Emerald Steel discard. Now, granted, Steel has always been a really rough matchup for this deck. Still, I kind of wonder how this deck did so well throughout the event. Maybe Mo has on his Twitter like the path he took, the other decks he had to face, and matchups are a huge thing in Lorcana especially. Because, a lot of this is very standard, right? He has so many 1-drops. I believe he has 18. Let's see. 3, 5 sets, 10, 4, 18 1-drops. Like, holy moly. And in that match with Zan, it looked bad because he keeps drawing all these 1-drops. That's just like, all right, well, there's no, real top end of this deck. But clearly it worked for him, so I'd be very curious to know what he faced all day. I don't know if it was just red-blue. He's also running 62 cards. I've never cared about that. I think you should run as many cards as you feel comfortable with. I know some people are on it's got to be 60. If you have a card over 60, you're blowing yourself out. No, I've seen many decks do just fine running 62, 64, 66. I saw one win a set championship with 73 or 72 something. So run what you feel comfortable with. He's probably not missing a 1-drop in here. Other than this, it's pretty standard stuff. The Hiss, I'm assuming, is probably in here to take out enemy Diablos. You have the Merlin Mim package. Lyle is, of course, in here. I wonder how well Lyle works in here. At least in that one match we saw with Zan, it didn't do much. Simply because, granted, Zan's deck is so slow. I just wonder how useful the whole lore draining aspect of this card is. Because it seems like you're going to be the faster deck anyway, which means they're probably not even going to have any lore. They're just going to be sitting there challenging you. So I don't know. But I know Lyle's been used a lot in the deck in this deck in the past. I do really like the Prince Philip. I've considered adding him to some of my lists. He essentially cannot be touched by Ruby Sapphire. They can't Medusa hit. They can't hit it with Big Sisu. They can't use Ice Block on it in order to make make him in range of the Big Sisu. So this card is essentially immune to that deck, which I like that. He's essentially going to guaranteed get 2 off. And not many people are running Grab Your Sword these days, so he's pretty good against Steel too. So yeah, it is nice seeing the Pegasus back. I really used to favor this card, so pretty straightforward. No locations. Genie over Rabbit, which makes sense if you're trying to put on lore pressure. Yeah. The biggest thing is, man, there are so many 1-drops. There's so many 1-drops. Again, looking at it, I kind of wonder how this was as successful as it was, because most of these 1-drops too, 3 of them are for card draw. Olaf is there to survive turn 1 Cinderella singing Storm Rage on. And Pegasus is evasive, but lore pressure, only Merfolk is putting on more than 1 lore a turn. So, but hey, it clearly showed its worth. So yeah, congrats to him. Next, we'll move on to our our grand final. So this is Scott Markeson. I'm pretty sure this is the guy who ended up second going against Ed. And it's pretty standard red-blue list. Azurite Sea is, of course, an absolutely insane card. Pirate's Life is funny. Watching it in this deck, this card seems honestly unfair and broken, which is funny because I didn't think that at all. But I think it just really has to do with Maui Half Shark. We'll touch on him in a second. I like the One of Queen too, just to potentially answer some early aggression, just in case people are coming at you. A Sisu to shift. Yeah, this is all pretty standard. Even one Hideaway, just in case there's an opposing Lucky Dime or location or anything you need to get rid of. Vitalosphere has been very popular. It's really nice to be able to give something like a Dragon Rush. So it banishes essentially 2 things the turn it comes in. Ice Block, Popsicle. Yeah, this all looks, pretty standard. A lot of it is just ratios. People are just going to have different ratios. He went in for full 4 Sisu, which is better against decks that can take songs out of your hand if they're running Bare Necessities or Ursula over the B-Prep. And obviously it's just one-sided. Yeah, Maui Shark is, I've really come to detest this card as I've played against so much red-blue lately. I just hate that. I wish it was one of 2 things. I wish it was either an offensive card that was used to remove stuff for your opponent, so it has, big attack power, or it was a win condition, because I hate that it's both. It's really dumb to see someone with a Half Shark sitting on the board. I'll have it sing How Far I'll Go, and then get back Pirate's Life, and then I'll also cast Sail just to draw a card. Oh, and I gained 2 lore from using these 2 as well. Hey, I'm going to brawl your guy. Oh, by the way, that gained me lore as well. Like, I don't understand why it becomes a win condition on its own. So, card's obnoxious, but in that, this list is, pretty standard. The one big thing in this list, there is no Lucky Dime. And I think in the finals specifically, that hurt Scott. Now, obviously, he made it to the finals, so I think most of us would probably take that as a finish for a championship. But Lucky Dime is a card that Ruby Amethyst absolutely fears because it has no way to answer a dime. The moment the dime comes down, it's staying there the entire game. Ruby Amethyst has no way to get a Lucky Dime off the board. And when some of those matches drug on, you could see, man, if he had a dime, even if you drop something like a dragon, you just go dragon, dime for 2, pass. You're just you're putting that inevitability against Ruby Amethyst, whereas otherwise, if you don't have that, Ruby Amethyst can absolutely go toe-to-toe with you and just last as long as you do, and they have the goat bounces. They have those ways of instant lure. Now, again, Maui Shark has kind of replaced that in a sense, but there's still nothing quite just like a good old Lucky Dime. Pretty impressive this is down to 14 uninkables, though, right? This is a normal list, and that's how crazy red-blue's gotten. I wonder if I should I'll probably make a separate video on some cards I think maybe could be on a banned or errata or restricted, or just maybe just how strong this deck has gotten. And again, I have to face it so frequently at locals. But yeah, down to 14 unequals. That used to be one of the downsides of running a red-blue deck, right? Was that, well, you had to risk so many uninkables. No, not this list. Way to go, Scott. All right, we have Kurt. Is this Steel Song? Or no, this looks like the Dwarven Mine deck. Yeah, the diggy hole, as they like to call it. I do like the Rapunzel's Tower in here. It's nice to... Man, can you imagine a Chenpo to Rapunzel's Tower? He's a 10 health at that point, right? Yeah, good luck unless you're playing Ruby. Even some of the smaller stuff. This looks pretty standard. Happy for Evasive. Peglet. Calhoun for Fighting. This one has more uninkables than the red-blue list. That's so crazy. That's so crazy. Good to see old Chenpo again. This card definitely fell off a bit after set 4. People started cutting him for other things. I wonder why he likes the Chenpo over the Pluto. Maybe if he's anticipating a lot of Steel Song mirrors or counters, that Pluto's a lot weaker there when they can put a little bit of damage on it. Whereas Chenpo says, nope, I'm just always going to hit for 4. So, makes sense. These are standard songs for this. Yeah. This looks pretty standard. Only other thing I'll really comment on is the John Silver. I actually think this card's pretty fun. It's a 3/3/3, which is fine. That's standard. It's not amazing. It's not bad, though. And I do like if the way they have to remove your characters is they're challenging. We saw this card. I don't know if it was this deck, but it was going against... I think it was going against a blurple deck. And especially early on, blurple's main removal is challenging you, using Foxes, using Elsas. Until they get to the Hades and maybe the Let It Goes, they have to challenge you. So this card put in a lot of work just saying, hey, you actually can't challenge me. It's also a captain, so he can protect your Smee if he comes out right after the Smee. Yeah, it's fun. I like this list. It's good. All right, next we have, is it Humza Khan? People have to forgive me if I have any mispronunciations. I don't know who these people are. And we have another red-blue list. This one's definitely got some different cards in it. Okay, we're back to the 20 uninkables. So this is like old school Ruby Sapphire. A lot more queens, definitely teching for aggro, which is supposed to be your quote-unquote weakest matchup. Sisu's, we'll go to Hades and Goofy in a minute because they stand out. 2 hideaways, definitely tech. Oh, wow, go the distance. I know anybody who's running this. Ready chosen damaged character of yours. They can't quest for the rest of the turn. Draw a card. Interesting. I wonder what that was used with. Because I don't think any of these characters naturally put damage on themselves. So it makes me think it was essentially used. You had a character challenge. You could then use this to ready them to draw a card. They could potentially challenge again, which is kind of nice. Interesting. 1 Great Stone Dragon. I'd be curious to know how much that came up, especially with discard not being as prevalent as it was. Lucky Dime, of course. Yeah, I'd be very curious about the go the distance and to know how well that card did or didn't help the deck. And that's something, too, about, I've studied a lot of tournaments and a lot of different card games. I always don't ever just be carried away by the fact that, oh, well, the card is in the deck, so therefore the card was great, and the card is the reason this player made it to, what is this, 4th place I think he got to? Yeah, and it's because of this card. I have interviewed so many players afterwards in Lorcana, Final Fantasy, etc. And when I ask them about their deck and a card like this, hey, how did Go the Distance perform for you? A lot of times I'll hear them say, yeah, it ended up doing nothing. I just inked it every time, or it never came up. I never saw it. So I'm not saying it didn't do anything. It's very possible. I would have to talk to this player to know that. But I just as a out there, hey, just because it's in the deck doesn't mean that it is the reason the deck succeeded. A lot of times people will put tech stuff in that just never even ends up coming up. Sometimes it does, though. Maybe it was. Maybe it really paid off. He's definitely going in on even more removal with cards like Let It Go and Hades. Just a 1 of each, but just really making sure they can try to take the cards our opponent has on the board. Running the Goofy, too. Man, this card just seems like worse Maui. No, it's evasive, so the nice thing about this, and my guess is why it was in here, is it can counter a Maui Shark. So one of the obnoxious things about Maui Shark is he also has evasive for some reason. So the Goofy can at least trade with it the turn it comes down. So they Maui, and let's say you don't give them anything to challenge, so they just quest or they sing with it, and then Goofy can immediately come in and take it out. Beyond that, I mean, he's a rusher unless you're trying to hit evasive, though, he's just worse Maui, right? He's 1 more expensive. He's uninkable. It's crazy that this card is uninkable, more expensive, with a worse stat line just for the evasive text. But, I mean, again, when you're trying to get rid of a Maui Shark, I guess that was worth it. Yeah, I really don't like this card. This would be another one that I would be curious to know how it performed for them, and if there was any other key card. I mean, it takes out a Genie, too, right? But, so this can also take out Genie. This can take out a Genie, and if you're ramping, Genie is also... I haven't seen any of the Ruby Sapphire decks struggle with Genie, so I feel like that wasn't the issue. This seems like it's in here to counter Maui Sharks, and I would hope it did that very well. Next, this is our championship winning list by Edmund Chu, the only Ruby Amethyst to make it to the top cut, which, of course, I was absolutely rooting for it, because I love Ruby Amethyst, and that's my baby. And so this list has gotten a lot of buzz, so I'm going to put out a little mini rant here, because I found it amusing that so many people were like, oh my gosh, like, what a meta call. He teched it so different. It's such a different deck. It's such a different deck. And I have to push back on that. This is still a pretty standard Ruby Amethyst deck. Which card do you see here that has not shown up in Ruby? All these cards have been played in Ruby Amethyst. The 1-drops are almost exclusively draws at this point. Merlin Mim package we've had since set 2. That's nothing new. Flynn Sisu. Tremaine has, yes, I know she kind of waned in popularity a bit after Medusa came out, but Tremaine was always around. I was always running it in my list. There were people always running Tremaines in their lists. Sisu's been in here since it came out. Not always. Some people prefer just the B prep, but yeah, that's not anything new. Brawl is a standard. Be Prepared Friends is a standard. And Library has come in and out since it came in set 5. You don't see Queen's Castle, but the Library was used plenty. I used it. So I'm not knocking Ed's list, because I do like some of the tech choices, quote unquote tech choices he made. But I just don't agree with the fact that, like, wow, this is so different. This is still standard Ruby Amethyst bounce control stuff. This is not the burn aggro version, or this is not a mill version that's using Very Merry Unbirthday and Thievery and Pirate's Life to just steal your lore. Like, those are very different decks that do very different things. This is still pretty standard Ruby Amethyst. Now, all that being said, I do understand that because Lorcana's deck building is so, its competitive deck building, I should say, is so limited and so small right now, that within that scope, yes, this is what constitutes, like, wow, a meta call, or it's a different deck build. So within that scope, I do understand that. 12 1-drops, really good against Ruby Amethyst. Or not Ruby Amethyst, Ruby Sapphire. The 1-drops are always kind of weird in this list. You really want to see one, even though you don't like have to, because if you see Flynn Sisu is the important part. But if you don't see Flynn, and you're like, you see Snake, but you don't have a 1-drop, you can't play the Snake, so you actually don't do anything for the first 2 turns. So I do like that he recognized, hey, getting a 1-drop out is actually pretty important, because you don't want to be trapped in that, well, I saw Snake, but I don't have a 1-drop, so I cannot play a card for 2 turns. That feels bad. I don't think I ever see him use Crab on screen once or twice. So I guess let's talk about a couple of the missing cards, quote unquote. There's no Maui. There's no Elsa the Fifth Spirit. I think that's okay. Yeah, and again, that's okay. There's no Genie. I mean, you can go look back at my videos since this set came out. I've said since the beginning, if Genie does not survive after the turn you play it, it is a worse rabbit, which is objective. Anyone can see that. If you play Genie and you know it's going to get banished before you can ever quest for lore, it's going to draw. You paid for to draw 1 card. Why do that when you can pay for to draw 2 cards? Where Genie excels over Rabbit is when it can stick around and it can put on that lore pressure with an evasive body. But because I have to play so much red-blue at my locals, every time I play Genie, it would just die. It would immediately be banished. Up, Brawl It, up, Sisu Shift, up, Medusa, whatever. So it really made me start favoring Rabbit, being like, no, I want that guaranteed second draw, because this Genie just is not sticking around. Especially with it being one of the big boogeymens in the meta. And Elsa, I do still really like Elsa. However, there are times, especially in the face against something like a Maui Shark, what's Elsa going to do to a Shark? Exert it and then run in, and then she'll get banished and only put 3 damage on it. I like Elsa a lot as a card, but there are times her 2 strength feels very, very, very low. And then for Maui himself, if you need a card to rush in and just beat something down, Maui is one of the best cards you can have. However, there are many times in many Ruby Amethyst matchups where I've drawn Maui when I'm trying to win. It's like, I just need lore. I just need to put a body on the board with lore that they have to remove or I win the game. And you draw Maui, you're like, all right, well, this doesn't do anything. He's just going to sit there. He has nothing to attack. So I just spend 5 to have a body just sit in place. So I think that's cool that Ed possibly felt that as well. I was just like, yeah, I just don't need that. You know, let's not even worry about that. I do love the 4 Tremaines, especially against red-blue. Tremaine is quite nice. So yeah, I love this list a lot. And again, just to kind of reiterate my point from earlier, I'm not criticizing it. I'm just criticizing the Discord that, like, wow, this is a wildly different Ruby Amethyst list than we've ever seen. I mean, it still has all the standard Ruby Amethyst cards in there. Within the context of Lorcana deck building, yeah, in a competitive sense, I get it. All right, moving on. Here we have another Ruby Sapphire. Let's see what's different about this one. No Queen in this list. Maui, Sharks, all our big bodies. Yep, all this looks pretty standard. And a Lucky Dime. Yeah, just a few very similar to this list. Let's see what the uninkable count is for this one. This one's 16, so he's definitely in between Scott's list and Humza's list. Other than that, I mean, there's nothing different in here, just different ratios, depending on what they valued. So we'll move on. Matthew Okimoto. I think it's correct to say he's a friend of the show. This is a person I've met in real life. I've actually had him on for an interview back when he made top 8 in Atlanta, I think. So let's see what his version. He does have some fun spice here in a Prince John. We'll go back to that in just a second. Sail, Vision Brawl, all very standard. Pirate's Life, Be Prepped. Ooh, a little spice down here too. We're actually running Shield of Virtue. I like this card a lot. It definitely feels expensive, but man, when you can challenge with a half shark, ready it, challenge again, and that pretty much applies to any of these characters, that you can challenge with a Maleficent Dragon, ready it, challenge it again, Maui. Especially if someone's running something like a McDuck Manor, now you can Maui, ready it, Maui again, take it out in 1 turn. That feels really good. Again, can get a little expensive because you have to pay 3 for it, but it's Ruby Sapphire. Surely you're going to be able to afford that with all this ink. Even protecting something like a Tamatoa, which is a difficult card to challenge. But yeah, I do like the Shield of Virtue. Prince John, I don't even know what this card does. Exert, play an item from your hand or discard with cost 5 or less for free exerted. I mean, that's pretty good effect. That is a really good effect. Most of these are 1-drops. So the highest value card we would get for that is Great Stone Dragon. Still, especially since it's a discard, it means you can banish Popsicle with Flowersham, and then Prince John can just bring it back. Granted, this doesn't do anything the turn it comes in, and you have to I'm gonna have to message Matt. Since I know him, I can message him, and this will be one of those ones that I can ask him directly. Hey, how much did this Prince John even come up? Like, would you cut it if you were running it again, or was it really useful? So, I'll give him a buzz about that. Maybe I can add it in the video description. Next, we have, I believe, what is our first of 2 blurple lists by Joseph Quigley. Good old blurple. This was the new quote-unquote hot sauce this set. Of course, we see Genie in here. Madam Mim package. What do we run in? 6 plus 4, 10 1-drops. It's a pretty solid number, pretty reliable. A lot of crabs. Again, a lot of blurples removal comes through challenging, so that's not surprising. One of the bells, full for Elsa. This one's running some Donald Duck for some late-game ramp. Lore Threatening Pressure 2. Elsa's pretty standard, and usually you'll see some Hades. 1 Finder's Keeper. I'd be curious to know how much that did or didn't come up. I don't know. I've never been over the moon about this card. Like, so if Friends on the other side draws for 2, and then 2 more ink, you get 1 more card, but this one has to be paid for 5. You can't sing it. 3 cards is a lot, though. That is a really big draw. And McDuck Manor, which I absolutely love in here. Yeah, this is pretty straightforward. Pretty smooth blurple list. 12 is a really good uninkable number. That's the number I try to stay at if I can. Yeah, this looks pretty solid. I can see what it did well. I wonder how much the Donald came up. He seems good, especially if you're going first. You can ramp faster. Plus, he's 2 lore. It's something they have to answer. It's got the body of a Lady Tremaine. Yeah, this just looks very straightforward. It's kind of one of the things I like about blurple, right? It's not overly tricky or have a lot of complicated lines. Not that anything in Lorcana really does, but nice. So, here's Zan Syed. He was, of course, playing his Emerald Steel list. Man, I'll tell you what, I don't know what happened to this list within one set, because I saw this list so much last set, and it still looked so dominant. It looked stronger than it was in set 4. Like, did just Genie coming out change that much? Is it just that there's more card draw in the game in general? Like, it's crazy how slow this list looks sometimes. And I know Zan got far. He got to, it was the semifinals, right? Like, I think he was facing Ed, and it was on the way to the final. So it did really well for him. But there were so many times, and granted, it was just the games we saw on stream, so maybe it performed very differently off stream. It just looked slow. It just looked so slow, and it didn't even seem like it made you discard that much. Losing Bucky definitely has hurt the deck. Your discard cards are Sudden Chill and Hypnotize. That's it. Those are the cards you have. I do love the addition of I'm Still Here, especially if Ursula sings this. It essentially says draw 2, and she can protect herself and another character. That's really cool. He used that a lot with challenging. He'd give it to like a card like Pete. Now Pete can challenge into a Smee but actually survive. That's really neat. You can just slap it on your Smee so it doesn't take damage. Yeah, that's cool. God, 20 uninkable Zan. That is a lot. 2 Doc, of course, the Diablo, the Prince John, Calhoun, Merfolk. Merfolk is another form of discard. Okay, and you don't always see a ton of these decks running Merfolk, so I do like that the Merfolk, especially if you get out early and they got to challenge it. Hey, it's another way to hit your hand. Yeah, it clearly did well. I'm not going to lie. I'm not sad that this list is quote-unquote underperforming, even though it obviously got him to a top 4 finish. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't know what made it look so much slower. Or maybe it's that this deck didn't change so much as other decks got faster, so it looks slow by comparison. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts on that, because it's kind of crazy how... And Ursula, every time this card is either like the worst threat on the board or just absolutely nothing, all just dependent on the songs you have to back it up. Crazy. All right. Well done, Zen. Here we have Shawn, and this looks like Steel Song. Yep, we got our Gastons or Ursulas. Actually running the Queen package. I'm assuming we have the Shift Queen. Yes, we do. Only one Naveen. What are our uninkables at? 15. Okay. You know, I have to admit, I've never been over the moon about this aerial. It just seems like a lot of ink to invest. 2 ink, 3 damage. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's cheaper than a Storm Rage on, right? And it would deal more damage than that. So maybe, for some reason, I thought the numbers were backwards. I thought it was 3 ink for 2 damage. Okay, 2 for 3 sounds way better. Obviously, very vulnerable to red decks with Medusa or Ice Block Brawl, but Medusa hasn't been seen as much lately. Other than this, it's a pretty standard Steel Song. Yeah, the Queen package. I've always liked the Queen package. You can do a whole new world as early as turn 2, which is absolutely nuts. And, of course, your suite of songs. I do like the World's Greatest Criminal Mind. This card, not only can it outright take care of cards like Maui Shark, which can be a big threat, as well as Tamatoa. With the Queen, it works very well because you can purposely pump up your opponent's cards in strength to make them susceptible to World's Greatest Criminal Mind. This deck probably has the best answers to a Maui Shark because red decks can tend to struggle with it. Since it's immune to Brawl, Medusa, Sisu, all those cards, you need like a Dragon, Dragonfire, Maleficent Dragon. But this one, Criminal Mind can take it out. Zeus can take it out. With enough body, Strength can take it out. Yeah, this looks like really solid Steel Song. This one looks good. I'm not surprised to see this up here. This deck is always just a pain. Interesting. I haven't seen Pluto in any of these decks, and he was kind of all the rage when the set first came out and when I was casting some of the Cross-Continental Challenge, but you're not seeing him in here. I wonder, maybe he just ended up being too slow, or again, maybe if you're anticipating fighting a lot of steel mirrors, that he gets way less effective there. Although clearly there's so much red-blue there. Pluto seems pretty solid in red-blue since he's almost always going to be a 5/5. Next, we have Mr. Zach Bivens. This is our first look at a Amethyst Steel list. You know, when I was watching this, I was wondering, so what is the benefit of bringing Amethyst Steel, right? I think there are faster decks, potentially. And there are certainly decks that are last longer. Is this just kind of the best of both elements? Spessy was saying this a lot on his stream. I watched a lot of the championship through his channel, and that none of them seem to be running the 1-drop Maleficent, which is really good when you're trying to put on the aggro. But honestly, there's also just a lot of solid, good cards. Smee is proven time and time again. All these 1-drops that draw you cards are great. We know how good the Merlin Mim package is. Calhoun is very strong. Challenging. Lawrence is very good. Yeah, like every single one of these cards is just, yep, solid card, solid card, solid card. And this list is very straightforward. Just, okay, you have 52 proven solid characters that all do what they do very well. And then 2 sets of songs that also have proven they do what they do very well. Straightforward, simple. I like it. Favoring the rabbit a little more than the genie. Yeah, the 1-drops I think really help out with the card draw on these lists, because I have seen a few of these lists kind of peter out when they don't happen to hit their card draw, because it's rabbit, genie, and the 1-drops. That's it. We're not running Queen's Castle. We're not running Friends. We're not running the Days of Maleficent. So I did see it peter out a few times card draw wise, but I do very much enjoy just how straightforward this is. Low on inkable count too. RMB. This is another blurple list. And let's see. Yep. Again, looks pretty standard. Similar to what I just said about the last. It's just a lot of solid cards, right? Cards that pretty much prove that they do what you need them to do. He is on more Belle. I think he's on a few more Elsa too. This is 13 on inkable. I think Joseph had the other one, yeah, and he had 12. So Ryan had just a little more. He is running, Joe is running a sale, right? With the TPO? Yeah, of course. I was like, why wouldn't you run a sale? Let it go, friends. Yeah. No McDuck Manor. I do really like McDuck Manor in this list. I'm a little sad not to see that. But on that, again, this is, if you're noticing a pattern with all these lists, it's just a lot of tried and true cards, which is what you want at a big tournament. That when you're trying to win it, not always the greatest time to experiment. Here we have Pierre-Marc Dugois. I probably butchered that. I apologize. I think he's also known as Sailor. He was in the Cross-Continental Championship. Finally, see our first Medusa sighting. This card is, I think, still very strong, so it's kind of funny how much it's disappeared. All your standard red-blue stuff over here. Hideaway, Visions, yep. I feel like I've already seen this list 3 or 4 times over, just with a couple of little variations. 13 uninkable. Wow, I think that's the lowest uninkable yet I've seen for Ruby Sapphire. That's pretty impressive to get it that low. 3 Sisu, 3 B Prep as well. Ice, yeah. Wow. He somehow still kept it very low. Impressive. I like this. I like this a lot. Well done, sir. And next we have Patrick. This is another Amethyst Steel. What are we down to? 11 uninkable. Nice. We're getting very consistent. On a full 4 dock on this one. I don't think Zach was. He wasn't running his dock at all. Okay. So yeah, his didn't have that kind of dock protection draw power. Patrick's definitely does. This looks like it has a bit more draw power with it. Although no rabbits. Ooh, I don't know about that one. So we basically traded rabbit for dock. I mean, okay, I guess that does make a sort of sense. This deck's probably trying to go quick anyway. Player hand out, dock refill, hand out, dock refill. I guess that kind of makes a sort of sense. I'm a stickler for rabbit, but that does. And then a single friends and some strengths. Yeah. These lists are always they're so straightforward. Next, we have Justin Shaft, who was on screen at one point. I thought it was my buddy Justin, and when my girlfriend was like, "Hey, Justin's on stream," I was like, "Oh, he is?" And I looked at, "Oh, okay, it's not." Yes, Justin was on stream, but not my friend Justin. Hey, there's a Pluto sighting, Gantu as well. I'm assuming this is the Dwarven Mine version. Okay, Dwarven Mines. Yep, there's our songs. We are running the Pluto, running the Gantu too. I like the Gantu. I don't know how good it is or isn't, but he's just a big old 4-quester. Pluto's in here too. I wonder. So let's see. So he came in 15th, right? And I'm not sure how far he made it in the tournament. I would love to know, since he was running the Pluto, like, did it do well for him? Did he like it, or were some of these other players onto something when they're like, actually, I think you can cut it. It doesn't quite do what we thought it would. You're seeing a lot of these same characters. These lists are pretty set, pretty tight. There's not a whole lot of room for experimentation. Other than good old Gantu here. Yeah. And here, so that's the question I can always ask is, so did these cards perform well? Did he felt like they hindered the deck? Should he have gone in on something else? But I like seeing them here just because I think both these cards are fun. Last, but certainly not least, is this Felipe on another Ruby Sapphire. Is that a Mulan? A Mulan from set 2? An uninkable 4-cost rush 4/3? Huh. That's interesting. I wonder what that was for. Can't hit Genie. What else would you want to hit for a 4/3? I mean, it's basically a fox, right? It's a fox a turn later that's uninkable, but can be played solo. What card are you taking out with this? Or is it just, it's a beater? I just wanted something with Rush that would take out the majority of cards in that range. It does take out an opposing Sisu, like this, and can potentially survive if the hand's low enough. Mulan. Interesting. And we're on Tremaine in this version. Very interesting. Haven't seen Tremaine and Ruby Sapphire in quite a while. Medusa was kind of the de facto go-to. We're not running the usual top end either. No Tamatoa, no Maleficent Dragon. 13 uninkable, so our uninkable count is very low. I feel like it would be wrong to call this low to the ground because it still has Sisu and looks like a lot of the ramp powers. We actually have more Pirate's Life in this one. We're even running the Ruby Chromicon. Okay. I've always kind of liked this card. It's just never really shown up. I would love to know if this performed well for him, if that 1 extra damage would make a difference. You don't have to pay for this too, so if you get this out early, suddenly this Mulan is a 5/3, and that seems a little bit better attacking than a 4/3. Your Maui can one-shot a library now. I do like the McDuck Manners. I feel like this is a good quote-unquote mirror breaker, since even a Maui Shark can't one-shot it unless it hits backed up by a Vitalisphere. No Lucky Dime, no Tamata. Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, it clearly did well for him. He got to top 16. I don't know how far he went after that, but this one feels the most different out of the red-blue lists we've looked at. Though, again, alluding to my point earlier about Ruby Amethyst, right? It's not like none of these cards haven't been tried in this list. People have run McDuck Manor before. They've run Tremaine in the past. They've run... I don't know about the Mulan. The Mulan might truly be a new first-time card making it this far. Neat. Very neat. So those are all the lists from the event. Let me know which ones were your favorite. I, as a Ruby Amethyst enthusiast, I was happy to see it win it all. And that just seems appropriate, right? It's been like the most consistent, dominant deck since the game came out. It's been there since day one. I also kind of secretly hate Ruby Sapphires because I have to play it all the time, and I'm just so sick of it. But I also think a lot of the decks in the game have gotten, if you're looking at all these, everyone who's saying, well, it's the most diverse meta, I mean, I guess it just depends on your opinion, what you mean by diversity. If you mean like the physical number of cards showing up, the different ink colors, all these lists, though, tend to be running the same stuff, and it's not like they change drastically every set. They usually just get one card of an upgrade, but I kind of covered that in another video. So anyway, I'll end for now. I appreciate you watching. I hope you have a great day and a great weekend, and look forward to more great Lorcana content on the channel. Try to do one about Best of 2 formats. I do think that deserves its complete own video. I hope you enjoyed North American Championship, especially if you were there. Hope you had a good time. Appreciate you watching, and until next time, take care.